So right now, sitting in your bathroom, um, your daily anti-dandruff shampoo, your mint toothpaste, your moisturizer, and like the heavy grease-based white paint that a stage actor wears, they all share the exact same legal classification.
Yeah, it's a massive and, frankly, kind of counterintuitive regulatory umbrella.
Hmm.
I mean, when we hear the word cosmetics, we immediately picture a makeup bag.
Right,
But
right.
the reality is just far more sprawling than that.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a huge stack of information entirely sourced from a really comprehensive Wikipedia article on cosmetics.
Hmm.
We are going to uncover the surprising history, the molecular science, and the staggering global impact behind the products that you apply to your body every single morning. Because honestly, the legal definition of cosmetics completely upends how we normally use that word.
It really does. Under United States law, specifically according to the FDA, a cosmetic is defined as basically anything intended to be applied to the human body for cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness, or, altering the appearance.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure. Because that definition means anything that just sits on the surface or cleans the surface
Yeah.
is a cosmetic. I mean, the source material notes one specific exception, which is pure soap.
Right, soap is its own legal thing.
But other than that, a daily deodorant or just a basic face wash is legally in the exact same category as, like, theatrical prosthetics.
Yeah, they all sit at this incredible intersection of chemistry, sociology, and global regulation. So whether you're using a subtle skin serum to hydrate your face or, applying full theatrical paint to perform under stage lights.
Which is intense.
It is. But you're participating in a chemical exchange that human beings have been evolving and refining for literally thousands of years.
And looking at how long we've been at this, the history is genuinely shocking. Like, we think of modern beauty standards as intense today, but the lengths people used to go to and the sheer toxicity of what they were willing to absorb, it's horrifying. It's a story of literal deadly vanity. Absolutely. If we trace it back, we see ancient Egyptians utilizing kohl around their eyes, relying on castor oil as this sort of protective balm against the harsh environment.
That was functional, mostly.
Right, early functional and aesthetic applications. But the real shift into hazardous territory happens a bit later.
Yeah, right around the Renaissance in the 19th century in the West, there was this absolute global obsession with pale skin. And to achieve it, people were painting their faces with something called ceruse.
Yes.
And looking at the chemical makeup of ceruse, I mean, wait, it is literally white lead?
It is straight lead.
And meanwhile, in Japan, they had a traditional white face powder called oshiroi, which was also produced using white lead.
And as you can imagine, the side effects of applying heavy metals directly to the face were catastrophic.
I can't even.
We're talking about severe swelling and inflammation of the eyes. Users' tooth enamel would weaken and just rot away entirely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and in severe cases, the skin would literally turn black from the prolonged lead poisoning. With heavy daily use, it was a known and documented cause of death.
Wait, okay, they had to have known it was making them sick, right? Why would an entire society willfully give themselves lead poisoning? It's like painting your face with toxic house paint every single day just to prove to people you don't have to work out in the sun.
Well, it comes down to pale skin being an incredibly powerful sociological marker at the time. If you were pale, it meant you possessed the wealth and ability to stay indoors.
Right.
Tan skin was an indicator of the working class who had to labor outside in the fields. So society equated that opaque white finish with high status.
Just to look rich.
Basically.
Yeah.
And functionally, lead mixed with vinegar absorbed really readily into the skin to create that exact finish. The status symbol just outweighed the health risk.
And it didn't even stop in the 19th century either. The source mentions a product in the 20th century, this mascara called Lash Lure, that actually caused users to go blind.
Yeah, the Lash Lure incident is infamous.
It is wild to think about people blinding themselves just for thicker eyelashes.
It wasn't really until scientific advances in the late 19th and early 20th centuries that these wildly hazardous substances started being pushed out of mainstream formulas, which in turn paved the way for the modern commercial boom.
Right. The 1910s seem to be the turning point. You have figures like Elizabeth Arden and Max Factor building these massive empires, taking cosmetics from these dangerous, unregulated homebrews and transitioning them into a multi-billion-dollar standardized enterprise.
But as that enterprise grew, It became deeply intertwined with societal expectations of women, which led to a massive sociopolitical backlash.
The 1968 Miss America protest, right?
Exactly. By 1968, demonstrators threw cosmetics into what they called a freedom trash can.
The imagery of that is just so striking. They weren't just throwing away makeup. They were protesting these products as literal instruments of female torture. Why specifically cosmetics, though? Like, what was the core argument?
The underlying argument there was that cosmetics had transitioned from being an optional enhancement into a tool of enforced performative femininity.
Like a mandatory uniform.
Right. It was viewed as a uniform required for societal participation and professional acceptance. The protesters were rejecting the idea that a woman's natural face was somehow inherently unacceptable or unprofessional without chemical alteration.
That's a massive historical swing. I mean, going from a lethal indicator of aristocratic wealth to a booming commercial requirement to a symbol of oppression tossed into a trash can.
And today, the pendulum is swinging in yet another direction.
Yeah, the stigma around men wearing makeup is noticeably weakening, especially in places like the US. Brands are launching lines specifically targeting men to, conceal blemishes or enhance facial features.
We judge those 19th century aristocrats for poisoning themselves for status, but today's ultimate status symbol is clean beauty, which, ironically, has introduced an entirely new era of chemical complexity and potential danger.
Which forces us to ask, what exactly are we absorbing into our skin today? Let's get into the chemistry, because when I look at the label on a basic foundation or a moisturizer, the ingredient list is usually a mile long and completely unpronounceable. What is actually making up that paste?
Broadly speaking, cosmetics are constructed from two categories of chemical compounds: organic and inorganic. And here, organic just refers to carbon-based chemistry, not like farming practices.
Oh, okay.
The organic compounds are usually modified natural oils and fats that serve as the base or moisturizer. The inorganic compounds are processed minerals.
So the inorganic stuff is where we get the actual visual effects. Things like iron oxides to create different skin tone colors or zinc oxide. The source also mentions bismuth oxychloride.
Bismuth oxychloride is fascinating from a material science perspective. It is a nacreous mineral.
Meaning it looks like mother of pearl.
Exactly.
You know, that frosted pearlescent shimmer in a highlighter palette? That's what we're looking at.
Precisely. When a product gives the skin a shining, illuminated appearance, you are usually observing the optical light scattering effects of that specific inorganic heavy metal compound.
But consumers are incredibly wary of heavy metals and harsh chemicals now. We are living through this massive clean cosmetics movement where everyone wants safer plant-based ingredients.
Oh, absolutely.
But here is the wild part of the source material. The FDA does not even have a regulatory definition for the word natural when it comes to cosmetics.
None at all. It is entirely a marketing void.
That's insane.
The FDA actually explicitly warns consumers that choosing ingredients from sources considered organic or natural is absolutely no guarantee of safety. I mean, poison ivy is natural after all.
That feels incredibly deceptive. If the very word natural means whatever a marketing department decides it means, how can a consumer actually navigate what is safe?
It highlights a significant gap between marketing buzzwords and chemical reality. And that gap becomes a genuine public health concern when we look at the intentional inclusion of microplastics and nanoplastics in these formulas.
Okay, let's talk about the plastics, because this blew my mind. They aren't just accidentally flaking off the packaging into the lotion. Manufacturers intentionally synthesize and add these tiny plastics directly into the formula.
Yes, they do.
They use them as an ingredient carrier or to make the texture feel silky or to give the skin that smooth, illuminated effect. It's like rubbing tiny, invisible plastic scrubbing bubbles into your face. But instead of washing down the drain, they just move into your cells.
And we have to consider the biological environment where these plastics are being applied.
Yeah.
You are putting them on the face, the hands, the scalp. These are areas of the human body that are highly humid.
Right.
They are covered in open hair follicles and active sweat glands.
So they aren't just sitting on top of the skin like a physical barrier.
No, they are entering the body. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, on a molecular level, these nanoplastics do not just passively float around. They actively disturb the communication pathways inside your cells.
Well,
They do this by binding to your proteins and altering their secondary or tertiary structures.
hold on, let's break that down for a second. What does changing a protein's structure actually mean for the cell in plain English?
Think of your cell's proteins like a perfectly cut metal key designed to fit into a very specific biological lock to trigger a function.
Okay.
A protein's secondary and tertiary structure is simply the 3D shape that the amino acid chain folds into the shape of the key.
Got it.
When a nanoplastic binds to that protein, it physically warps and bends the shape.
So the key no longer hits the lock. The cell's communication just shuts down or misfires.
Exactly. And when proteins change shape and stop functioning correctly, the biological consequences on the skin are severe.
Like what?
Well, this mechanism leads to chronic inflammation, the development of severe allergies, and most alarmingly, an increased risk of carcinogenesis, which is the formation of cancer.
That is terrifying, and the source material highlights a really disturbing demographic reality alongside this chemistry. Studies show that women of color are disproportionately exposed to these specific harmful ingredients.
Yes, it is a documented sociological trend. Certain beauty products, particularly hair relaxers, on specific skin-altering creams that contain these harsh chemicals and plastics, are heavily targeted toward women of color.
Which is just awful.
It is. This specialized marketing leads to a significantly higher rate of use, and therefore a much higher rate of chemical exposure within those communities.
Which means understanding the chemistry of a moisturizer isn't just a matter of personal health, it's a massive issue of environmental justice and public health.
It really is. But understanding the raw chemistry inside the bottle is only half of the equation. Because over the last few decades, the actual physical mechanics of how we apply these chemicals has evolved into an absolute science.
No, there is a massive arsenal of tools and techniques now. And the industry generally splits this arsenal into two main categories: skincare and decorative makeup.
Skincare functions as the preparatory phase. You're dealing with cleansers, which might utilize cleansing oils. The chemical principle there is like dissolves, like the oil in the cleanser binds to the natural sebum and oil-based makeup on your face to basically lift it away.
Then you have chemical exfoliants. The source lists AHAs and BHAs. Those stand for alpha hydroxy acids and beta hydroxy acids, things like glycolic or salicylic acid.
Right.
And instead of using a rough physical scrub that tears at the skin, these acids literally dissolve the microscopic glue holding dead skin cells together, allowing them to just wash away. Add in your serums, your moisturizers, and your SPF to block UV radiation, and you finally have your canvas ready.
And once the cellular canvas is prepped, the decorative application begins. Primers are used to create a completely smooth, non-porous layer. Concealers neutralize specific blemishes, and foundation creates a uniform skin tone.
And the techniques required to apply this are basically optical illusions. You have contouring, which uses darker matte shades to artificially add depth and shadow, emphasizing bone structure. And then highlighting, which applies those light-reflecting nacreous minerals we talked about to the high points of the face, like the cheekbones and the bridge of the nose. But what really gets me is the tools.
The specialized delivery systems.
Yes. I mean, a modern makeup bag looks like a master painter's kit or a mechanic's toolbox. You've got spoolies for the eyebrows. You've got kabuki brushes, stippling brushes, beauty blenders. Why do we need 20 different brushes just to put powder on a face?
Well, it's because every single tool is engineered for a specific physical property of the chemical compound it carries. The most fundamental difference is in the bristles. Makeup brushes are either synthetic or natural.
What's the practical difference between them? Like, why choose one over the other?
Synthetic brushes are made of man-made polymers, usually nylon or polyester. These fibers are completely non-porous. They do not absorb moisture.
Yeah.
Therefore, they are the perfect delivery mechanism for liquid and cream products like foundation. The liquid product simply glides off the synthetic fiber and transfers entirely onto the skin.
Ah, so if you used a natural hairbrush for a liquid foundation, the brush would just soak it all up like a sponge and waste the product.
Exactly. Natural animal hairbrushes have microscopic cuticles along the shaft, identical to human hair. Those cuticles create friction, which makes them ideal for gripping dry powders and blending them softly across the skin without dropping the pigment. It is a perfect example of form following chemical function.
That makes so much sense. And then the shapes of the brushes dictate the coverage. Like, a kabuki brush has a short stem and very dense packed bristles. It's designed to buff powder evenly over a large surface area.
Right.
Whereas a stippling brush has these dual-length, soft, synthetic bristles that gently tap liquid onto the skin, giving you an airbrushed, light to medium coverage effect. And a spoolie is just that little wire spiral brush used to comb out brow hairs or apply mascara.
And this level of technical specialization powers a staggering global economy. I mean, these aren't just tools sitting on a bathroom vanity. They represent billions of dollars moving through a highly complex web of international legislation.
The numbers are astronomical. The source notes that back in 2005, the market volume for the US, Europe, and Japan alone was around 70 billion euros a year.
A massive industry.
And the growth in emerging markets like China is explosive. It was expected to hit $7.4 billion by 2021. And that is heavily driven by social media tutorials and shifting attitudes among younger demographics who are treating makeup application as a technical hobby.
With an industry operating at that massive global scale, the regulatory environments dictate how these chemical compounds move across international borders.
Yeah.
And the contrast in how different regions regulate these products is stark.
Let's look at the European Union. Under their EC 1223/2009 regulation, the EU operates like a strict bouncer at the door of a club.
That's a good analogy.
Right. They require a designated responsible person to be legally on file for every single product. This person is legally liable for ensuring the product complies with all safety norms. The company also has to maintain a comprehensive product information file containing safety reports, manufacturing methods, and proof of any effects the product claims to have.
The EU utilizes the precautionary principle, essentially. Prove to us that this chemical is safe before you are allowed to sell it to our citizens. In sharp contrast, the United States Food and Drug Administration operates under a vastly different philosophy.
Yeah, under current U.S. law, the FDA mostly watches from the sidelines. Cosmetic products and ingredients do not require FDA pre-market approval at all, with the sole exception of color additives.
Right. The U.S. system relies on post-market surveillance. The manufacturers are legally responsible for ensuring their own products are safe, but they don't have to prove it to the FDA before stocking the shelves.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the FDA only steps in to issue warning letters or request recalls after a product is already on the market and has been shown to cause harm or violate labeling laws.
It's a fundamental difference in philosophy. But this disparity creates a fascinating global domino effect, especially when we look at the ethics of safety evaluation, like the global shift on animal testing.
Animal testing is the perfect example of how interconnected this industry is. In 2002, the European Union agreed to phase in a near-total ban on the sale of any animal-tested cosmetics.
Wow, that early.
Yeah, and that ban took full effect across 2009 and 2013. That was a definitive legislative line in the sand for one of the largest consumer markets on Earth.
And it forced the rest of the world to respond. Take China, for example. Historically, China required mandatory animal testing on all cosmetic products sold there. But following the global shift sparked by the EU, China waived those requirements for domestically produced products in 2014. And by 2020, they lifted the laws making animal testing compulsory entirely.
We saw a similar legislative movement in Australia, too, which passed a bill banning the use of data derived from animal testing in the cosmetic industry, starting in mid-2020.
So a law passed in Brussels effectively changes the workflow in laboratories on the other side of the planet.
Exactly. When a major economic bloc like the EU enforces a standard multinational corporations, the handful of massive conglomerates like L'Oreal, Unilever, and Estée Lauder that dominate the global industry, they cannot afford to lose access to that market.
Right. It's just too much money to leave on the table.
Exactly. So rather than making two different versions of a lipstick, they often change their baseline formulations, their testing protocols, and their global supply chains worldwide just to comply with the strictest region's rules.
Which brings this entire massive, sprawling topic right back to you, the listener. Because it's easy to look at a tube of concealer and just see makeup. But the next time you step into the shower to wash your hair, or you apply your daily SPF, or you blend powder with a natural bristle kabuki brush, you aren't just getting ready for the day. You are actively participating in a millennia-old, multi-billion-dollar collision of chemistry, culture, and global law.
It is a daily routine built on centuries of trial and error. But it leaves us with a critical question to consider. We can easily look back at those 19th century aristocrats, painting their faces with lethal white lead, and view them with a sense of historical superiority.
Right.
We think they were foolish for prioritizing a sociological status symbol over the clear toxicity of their daily routines.
Yeah, I mean, painting themselves with toxic house paint just to look wealthy.
But when we consider our current landscape, the lack of pre-market approval in places like the U.S., the legally meaningless marketing terms like natural, and our widespread use of unregulated protein warping nanoplastics strictly for the sake of a smoother lotion.
It's kind of sobering.
It forces a bit of humility. What invisible ingredient sitting quietly in our bathroom cabinets right now will the history books of the 22nd century look back on with absolute horror?